we're going to get started. And so just a little bit about how this evening is going to run. We are going to talk a little bit about the organizational changes that have occurred and answer some of the board questions first. Then we're going to move on to discussing the health and safety plan, and then move on to programming. And at the end of each section, we're going to have a little bit of an additional Q&A. We received a bunch of questions from the community. Thank you all so much for sharing your questions with us. A little bit about how the flow is going to go. Once we've talked about each topic, Nora is going to handle the facilitation of getting questions from all of you. So you raise your hands, Nora will call on you and we can do the question, or you can also ask it via chat. So I guess it's a little hard with everyone muted, and I apologize because it's strangely awkward for me because I can't, hear people's responses, but I'm assuming that everyone knows how to raise their hand. If they don't, they could just chat to Nora. She can tell you how to do that. All right, and so I'm gonna start off this evening talking a little bit about the organizational change. We had hoped to have Mike and Julia here this evening to talk with everyone, to make a statement, to share their thoughts on everything that's going on. And unfortunately, we all received an email to the OC community from them earlier this evening saying that they wouldn't be attending tonight. So that's, we're saddened to hear that. It would have been nice to have them here to talk, but we at the same time understand. A little bit from the board's perspective about why Mike and Julia have chosen to step back from the day-to-day this year. Mike and Julia did not agree with some of the metrics in the plan that the board had come up with, or that some of the metrics of the Chester County Health Department that the board wanted to rely on, and therefore they decided to step back from the day-to-day operations of OC to allow on-campus programming to continue. They asked for an unrestricted leave of absence for the 2020-2021 program year, and we are still working through them on what the specifics of that leave of absence is with a mediator. There's no intention of not having Mike and Julia back here at OC in the future. We're saddened that they've chosen to take a leave. We want them to continue to participate in the organization, but we also want to honor their desire to not have to implement a plan that they don't feel that they can implement, that they have personal feelings against implementing. We all have the best interest of OC in mind, and we're still working on what, if any, their role will be this year, right? They are still involved in some aspects of OC, and we hope that that continues through this year. They're doing educational consultations, they're working on grant writing, so they're continuing to be involved, and we're continuing to work with them as a board with the mediator to figure out their involvement moving forward this year. I guess we can take some questions around that or around Julia's email this evening, if anyone has any.
Yes, Corinne had a question.
Yes.
Let me make sure I do this right. Corinne, can we hear you? Nope. Those are not muted.
She looks frozen.
Oh yeah, it's got dots.
It looks frozen, but she's definitely not muted. Looking through if anyone else had any questions. Don't have any other hands raised currently. Oh, she raised her hand again. Let's see. Maybe if I mute and unmute.
Corinne, can you speak? Or?
Okay, so maybe it looks like Corinne is not muted, but we can't hear or see her. So maybe while she's working that out, Jennifer Eckert had a question. Let me just scroll
And
down.
I
here.
also actually, I have one in the chat. So,
Okay.
so the question was, who are the new directors, or is it just Rick? For this program year, Rick is the interim executive director. He is leading the organization in the operational side of things. The board is here to support him. So for this 2020-2021 program year, it's Rick Slutaris.
All right, and Jennifer, unmuting you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jennifer Eckert. My 16-year-old daughter was going to participate in OC for the first time this year. So it looks like we're kind of coming into the organization there's a lot going on in the world and a lot going on at OC too. But my question is, what is the difference between the metrics set out by Chester County and what Mike and Julia, the metrics that Mike and Julia had agreed to be comfortable with, which they repeated for us or specified for us? So that was the first time I was seeing it in their email.
So the metrics of the Chester County Health Department, the low, moderate, and high phases allow for both in-person and hybrid programming, and hybrid programming can also be in-person programming. Hybrid programming is programming that's designed for schools to allow for distancing. So hybrid programming is to be used to space out. So half the students attend half the day, half the students attend another half of the day, with the intent that in large schools with little space, it allows for them to reduce the density in each classroom by half, right? So that there is enough distance between each young person in person in the hybrid phase. In terms of OC, yes. In terms of OC, that is allowable. So the largest point of contention with the most recent metrics was the ability for OC to offer indoor programming in the low, moderate, and high phase. And Rick can probably speak a little bit more to this as to the programming. The goal of the board was to not limit OC's ability to operationalize this. And so where in-person, on-campus indoor programming was allowed, we wanted to be able to, by Chester County Health Department guidelines, we wanted to be able to allow that. And so the board passed a plan that would allow for the most flexibility for that plan to be operationalized and for programs to be held on campus within the safe bounds, with safety in mind and the safe bounds of what was determined by Chester County Health Department.
Okay, and Corinne's question, she messaged me is, will Mike and Julia be returning to their co-director roles?
So it is our hope that Mike and Julia remain with OC and return to OC. In taking a leave of absence and with the board having a fiduciary responsibility to OC and us not knowing how the next year will play out financially for OC or the following year, we guaranteed them positions back at OC, but we could not guarantee them co-director positions, with the understanding that we don't know what the financial landscape of OC would be a year from now. And from a financial, organizational, fiduciary perspective, we just cannot lock up two salaries at certain rates in certain positions a year from now. And so, whereas we want to work with Mike and Julia, we want them to be highly involved in OC, we could not guarantee their co-director positions.
I had a follow-up question from Jennifer's, which was specifics about what was the plan that Julia and Mike passed, which I think I can just go ahead and answer. The plan that Julia and Mike passed on was the one that we submitted to the community. That was the follow-up question. And then I had another question. Why are we applying the metrics which are designed for high density, high population for a campus/organization that is much smaller with a campus and large indoor space options?
So again, and maybe Rick can speak a little more to this when we get down to the plan section, because we definitely have some other questions from the board section to answer that we would like to move into. But in terms of utilizing the metrics from the Chester County Health Department, the board felt it was important to align align OC's health and safety plan with a set of metrics that was vetted, and Chester County Health Department, who oversees Delaware County Health Department, was the metric that we chose. So it's, yes, granted, it has been developed for bigger, larger schools and larger organizations, but us and a lot of our peer institutions have also selected that as their metric. Corinne is raising her hand physically in that. Let me,
You had.
there we go. I think yeah.
Am I working now?
Yeah, you're good. Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry, I had to switch devices. Yeah, I guess my question, which was stated in an email earlier today, is the board is pushing this high phase in-person indoor plan, and I guess I'm curious how you got to that point. If you had 2/3 of your administrators saying they weren't comfortable with that plan, and if OC's main value philosophy is collaboration, how did you get to the point where you said high phase yes, Julie and Mike no? Thank you.
I'll jump in, Jen, because we can have some different voices here. It's not that binary of an equation. We all agreed, including Julia, Mike, and Rick, that we'd be guided by the Chester County Health Department. We agreed on that at the end of last term because we thought they were a trusted resource. We all agreed that in-campus programming, if safe, was preferable to remote learning. The disagreement came at the point where the Chester County Health Department in its guidance said, basically, OC can operate at these levels because we can properly space our young people, because we have that capacious campus, because we have a smaller student body. We can abide by all those guidelines in order to offer on-campus options, a hybrid option at every level. Mike and Julia felt comfortable because of their personal safety, as they said in their letter, because of their personal safety standards, that they were not comfortable at the higher levels having indoor programming. And so it was not a matter of Mike and Julia no, one person yes. It was the entire board agreed to support a plan that gave us the maximum flexibility, prioritize on-campus learning, followed the Chester County Health Department guidelines, and the fracture came at the point where Mike and Julia, again, and we respect and honor that, and Mike and Julia, any other family, any other facilitator who likewise feels that their personal safety level is not met under this plan, we understand that and welcome them back at a time when they feel more comfortable. But it simply was, we were abiding by our general commitments that we made to the community, and we felt comfortable that we could operationalize a plan that was consistent with the standards we'd set from the very beginning. And so I'm gonna move into the questions. We had several other questions people submitted online, and there were several of them that were asked several times, so we noticed a theme there. So we're going to address those questions to make sure that all those people who submitted those questions at least have the greatest chance of having a response that answers fully or part of that question. So I think we have those questions available to us, right, Jen?
Yeah, so the first round was, which we discussed a little bit here, was there were a lot of questions or concerns around how we arrived at our decisions on the health and safety plan and the roles of the co-directors, which we've talked a lot about already. Just a little bit of one of the ideas was, how did the board get involved, right? So this is probably the most board involvement that the community has seen in a while, but the board was involved because OC is currently registered as a school. It's a preschool. It's registered as a preschool, and because of this, there's a state requirement that the health and safety plan be approved by the board of directors. So that's why Mike and Julia needed to submit the plan to us, and the plan needed to be approved by us. We discussed a little bit of how we got to the passing of the plan, and how its alignment with the Chester County Health Department. One of the other questions was a little bit around providing both on-campus and virtual programming simultaneously. And whereas that had been a desire of the board, it has become difficult to operationalize at this point. But that is something that we are looking to move forward with and add virtual components when possible. But the idea again behind, as Anton said, behind the health and safety plan was to provide a health and safety plan that was as flexible as possible to allow OC to operate this program year, safely operate this program year, I should say. So there was that. There was some questions around the board and the board structure itself. So who chooses the OC board? And Lisa, if you want to talk to that a little bit.
Well, basically the functioning of the board is, or the people who are on the board are often recommended by several different places. Board members can recommend, co-directors can recommend someone for the board. And basically what we try to do, the Committee on Trustees is the organization within the board, which is chaired by Julia and also includes myself and Tommy Nielsen. And what we try to do is we try to figure out, based on recommendations of the board, what types of skill sets we need to fill. So for instance, if we need a grant writer, or if we need someone who's got marketing background, we might reach out to that person and see what their bandwidth is. We might go ahead and reach out. Actually, before we reach out to the person, we would try to figure out if that person would fit the skill set. And then we would go to the board, and the board would say that, yes, these people seem to fit maybe what we would want going forward. So then we might reach out to that person and say, we'd like you to join our advisory council, so we get to know that person a little bit, see what their bandwidth is, see how much time they have to spend, which would typically be less on the advisory council than it would be on the board. And then we would go to the board and we would say, do you have any great concerns about these people? What do you think? And then we would invite them onto the board. Now, the first thing I said is really the most important thing, is we get recommendations for board members in many, many different places. And one of the questions had been, why can't the community suggest board members? And of course, the community can suggest board members, and we would welcome that, because we try to have a wide-ranging variety of people representing. Right now, we've got people who are alumni, we've got people who are current parents, people who are alumni parents, and as you know, we're all very much hoping to work together to make OC a community again. So we would absolutely encourage people, if they have suggestions for board members, that they could really reach out to us at any time and let us know who they are.
Emily had a question that had been kind of pending previously, so I want to make sure that that is addressed. So I'm just going to go ahead and unmute you now, Emily. You should be good.
Okay, thank you. So based on my understanding, I heard a couple of questions regarding the health and safety plan that Julia and Mike presented, and then I heard a steer to discussing what the Chester County Health Department is supporting. My understanding is that the plan that Julia and Mike proposed and supported was consistent with Chester County Health Department guidelines. The only difference was being inside in the low phase, being outside in moderate, and in high and very high phases being virtual. So based on their plan, ironically, we would all be at OC on campus right now. which I find deeply, deeply upsetting. That we're kind of getting steered in a different path of understanding here, when that's where we would be.
Based on the current guidelines, we're actually in the high phase. So we would be, based on that, we would be virtual right now.
We would have been a couple of weeks ago. We were at a PCR under 5.
Yeah, so where's the, so currently Chester County is at, or Delaware County is at 49 incidents per 100,000 with a PCR of under 5, but it's the 2 metrics that go hand in hand. So until Delaware County would be at a 10 incidences per 100,000, we would not be on campus regardless of the PCR. So we would be fairly far off from being on campus right now, because we're in the high phase still in Delaware County.
Corinne, did you have something else before that piggybacked on that?
Sorry, I have to scroll through the whole list. Give me 1 second. Okay.
I know
we should be
we
good.
also had, I believe the plan was to try to break this up into parts, and I want to be mindful that we want also to have our present co-director lay out what the health and safety plan is and what the operational plan is, and also to answer a couple more questions that were submitted to the board. And again, these are questions that we had several variants of these questions, so it represents more than one person asking. So I'd like to make sure that we get to those and get to Rick, and then we may have time at the end to get additional questions, but
sure, I just wanted to follow up on what Emily was saying. And curious, I guess, I know that you're focused on following the Chester County Health Department guidelines. I'm also curious about the survey that went out that was just surveying parents on their comfort level in the low phase. And so what was done with that data to generate the plan that now says we'd be indoors in person during the high phase? And I guess my question to maybe the community is, if you had the choice between in-person high phase and a fractured community and 2 co-directors leaving, or in-person indoors low phase, outdoors moderate, virtual high, which would you choose?
So I'll respond. The question is not wholly accurate, because at the end of the day, as the trustees, and we're charged with approving a health and safety plan, it's not simply a popularity contest of which plan or what people feel the most comfortable with. We have to make sure, 1, it's safe. We have to make sure, 2, it's operationalized. And 3, it's consistent with our commitments that we've made, and our commitments and our belief that on-campus learning is preferable to off-campus. And while we respect that somebody's personal safety level may be different than somebody else's, at the same time, we want to make sure that we honor what, referring to that poll, that poll was a data point that indicated there were a lot of people who also preferred on-campus learning. It wasn't specific with regard to high, you're absolutely right, but it was an indication. And then there was other data points in terms of communications we received from other families. And again, like I said, it's not a popularity contest, it was just information. We were already committed to the idea that, and Julia and Mike were committed to it as well, the idea that on-campus learning is preferable to off-campus learning. The only fracture came at the point where they felt, well, even though the Chester County Health Department says we can do it, we personally don't feel comfortable with that. And so we had a difference there. And the board, the majority of the board felt it was appropriate to move forward. So I want to answer the questions we also have in the queue from the people who submitted it to us online.
Yeah, so do we have, I know that we wanted to stick to answering the questions that had been submitted previously. Do we want to follow that cadence, or do you want me to go through some of the, yeah.
I can
let's
continue on that a
continue
little
into
bit.
that.
And there will be, at the end of each section, we will absolutely be able to address the additional questions for each section. We're not, we do want to hear you.
So there was a question about the needs and the desires of the staff during this process. And as many of you know, because many of you are both staff and family members of our community, the staff was polled as well. And at no time, and I think Anton spoke to this, were we asking anybody who didn't feel comfortable to be on campus to come on campus. And we were talking about a virtual component at that time, thinking that maybe some of the facilitators who were not comfortable on campus might want to take on a virtual task to support programming. So we just want to make sure that everyone knows that none of the staff or the facilitators were asked to be on campus if they were not feeling comfortable to be on campus. And that was it for that one. Do you want to move on to Anton's question?
Yeah,
Anton,
so we were going to discuss the guiding principles that we were using. And this also, someone asked a question in the chat to me in terms of how the decision was made on the plan, which I think rolls into this. Did we use consensus? Did we vote? That type of thing. So Anton, if you could talk to that.
Sure. And probably as the most tenured member of this trustee group, I've been here, I think, the longest. OC is always, we strive for consensus-based decision-making. And that's basically a way of reaching agreement between all members of a group. Instead of automatically voting for an item and having the majority of the group get their way, we try to use consensus because we're committed to finding a solution that everyone actively supports, or at the very least that they can live with. That said, there have been times in the past when we have not been able to reach consensus and we have relied on majority votes, as we did in this case. In the absence of being able to reach that consensus and to increase the likelihood that all the opinions originally of our leadership and their ideas and concerns were taken into account, we've had several meetings one-to-one with the facilitators and also as a group. We've brought in a mediator to help make sure that every member of the leadership team felt like their ideas were fully heard and that if there was a possible solution that we could find it. With regard to the community outside of the leadership team, we polled staff, we polled families. So in the absence of being able to reach a consensus in this case, we continue to be committed to the idea of getting and gathering as many opinions and ideas and concerns as we can in order to inform our decision making.
Okay, and then the next question is, what efforts were, there were questions around what efforts were made to mediate any disputes with and retain the staff members who chose to resign? Lisa, would you like to speak with
Sure.
this?
Typically, exit interviews for families are conducted by board members, but typically staff is handled by the co-directors. But we felt since the three staff who stepped down were important members of our community, we did reach out to them. We offered to do exit interviews. We reached out to them via email a couple times to see if we could give them an opportunity to have some healing and to go forward with what their feelings were about ever coming back to OC. And so we did reach out to all three facilitators who left. And we spoke with them basically by email. Nora conducted 2 and I conducted 1.
Thanks, Lisa. And we've actually been asked in the chat to kind of restate the sections that we're going to be going through. So this current section is questions for the board specifically. The next section that we're going to move into is going to be the health and safety plan. And then after that, programming for this year. So just because people were asking if they could, they want to sort their questions. So those are the sections.
And at the end of, I am seeing the questions that are coming in. I don't want anyone to feel ignored. It's just at the end of this section, we'll then have time to address the hands raised and the questions coming in.
I think Anton is next with why OC was delayed and the communication that went out.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, the delayed communication, we wanted to make sure, again, in keeping with honoring each individual's, personal safety levels and making sure that everybody had the opportunity to fully state their reasoning. We were trying to craft statements to make sure that all sides felt they were heard. In hindsight, it would have made more sense for us perhaps to be much more factual and simple in terms of saying Mike and Julia were stepping away because their personal safety levels weren't being met, and Rick was stepping in and we had approved a health and safety plan. That's a lesson learned. And it's certainly, as a family member, as a father of a young person there, I can understand why not hearing from us could create a lot of unease. And again, that's a lesson that we learned, how to balance the needs of our very valued leadership, but also with the needs for families to have enough information to start to move forward and plan their lives. So we sincerely apologize for this and absolutely understand that it could have been done differently. And in hindsight, we would have done it differently. Lesson learned.
So there's an additional question that was asked in the chat and also asked previously. Natalie Peterson was the 6th member of the board. She worked tirelessly with us through all of this, but eventually chose to step down. She stepped down with no animosity towards the board, and we've been in contact with her, but again, to Anton's point in trying to, people's reasons are their own. It's a great loss for the board that she's no longer part of it. But she was truly a valued member of the board. We all appreciated her insight and input, and she is sorely missed. But she chose to step down from the board, and so there's the 5 of us now. There were a few questions around considering the effects of all of this on OC post-pandemic. The board is highly cognizant of and greatly focused on OC as an organization, its sustainability, and its long-term resilience. And we, in part, have made some of the decisions that we've made for the long-term sustainability of OC. OC is, as I described in the email that I sent to the community earlier, OC, we have a fiscal responsibility for OC, and OC gets all of the majority of its funding from program-related funding. So the programs that you all choose to participate in on campus are what funds OC. And we wanted to honor, and the community, we wanted to be able to provide programming to be able to fund OC moving forward. And we wanted to honor the committed staff that we have and all of that. And in the long-term interest of OC, this was the the path that we chose, right? There were other paths presented. Shutting OC down for an entire year was a potential path forward in which we'd lose families and staff, certainly, you know, moving to a virtual, a plan that was highly virtualized, which would also potentially lose staff and families. And so as the board made decisions, and again, how this gets operationalized is up to the OC co-directors, or Rick as an executive director now, but in choosing a plan and a path forward, we absolutely had OC's long-term success in mind in terms of providing programs this year and providing services that we committed to providing to the community. So that ends the section on questions for the board. Are there additional questions for the board before we move on to the questions regarding the health and safety, or information regarding the health and safety plan?
Well,
Yes.
I think we do have additional questions, and what I think we agreed to in setting up the meeting was that we would allow for each section to have its time, and then at the end, we can have a parking lot where questions that were not already asked, there were a couple questions asked from the audience for this section, as well as a couple questions that we had from people who submitted it earlier. Any audience questions that remain outstanding, we can revisit at the end after each section has had an opportunity to be addressed, because we want to make sure that all families who are here, especially those who may have questions about, okay, what does programming look like? What does the health and safety plan look like? That we make sure we fully give them an opportunity as well to address those issues. So I think who's up next?
Okay. So Rick is up next. So Rick is the interim executive director. He's been at OC for 16, 17 years now, co-directing with Mike and Julia, and he's going to walk us through the health and safety plan and the questions that were asked around that, and then move on to programming. And then at the end, we'll fill in all of the questions that that have been asked.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for all your questions. I typed them up, and so I'm going to do a little bit of reading and a little bit of explaining. Let me go through what people have submitted. First, there were a few questions around the pandemic team coordinator and the qualifications. And the PDE, the PA Department of Education, states that they required the identification of a pandemic coordinator and/or pandemic team with defined roles and responsibilities for health and safety preparedness and response planning. They go on to say one possible consideration is to identify a staff member to serve in the role as the pandemic coordinator. Mike and Julia were the initial pandemic coordinators, and now I'm in that role. A few people also asked about enforcing the health and safety plan. We will be following the health and safety plan. And some people asked about, young people might have challenges with wearing a mask. How is this going to work? Totally reasonable as we all try to get used to what's going on here and this new normal that we have. If a youth, a parent, or a staff member is not following the guidelines, it's going to be treated just like any other challenge at OC, right? First, we want to remind them about the guidance and the importance of following it. This is why we're here, right? This is what we have to do. This is what is recommended. I understand that we have varying levels of risk tolerance in our community regarding COVID, but while we're on campus, we're going to follow the health and safety plan. If they choose not to follow it, the next thing would be, if it's a young one, I'd want to talk to their parent and just help them understand. This is why, Bobby's struggling with it. This is important. This is what we've agreed to. This is when you come to Open Connections, when you sign up this year, you're signing up to abide by the health and safety plan. If the person is still unable, instead of making them out to be a bad person or anything like that, just like at OC, we'd recognize, honoring where they are. We don't want to set someone up for failure. So if they're not unable to wear the mask or follow the rules of the health and safety plan, they should, unenroll, and then they'll come back when they can. So yeah, there may be young people that are really going to struggle with that. And we're going to do everything to try to help them. I know that the Open program is designing activities and things like that to show what 6 feet like, or why the importance of wearing a mask. They're having fun with it. And we're going to be doing that to help educate them. And yes, in the worst case scenario, if they're unable to follow the health and safety plan, they can't come to campus, right? But it's not a bad thing. It just might be where they are. So there's that. Next, there were two questions regarding the choice to be on campus during high phase and why indoors would be an option during the high phase. So I know Jen and Anton, and I think members of the board have talked about that. Let me at least lay out what I have. So at the end of last year, families, maybe not every family, but the vast majority made it loud and clear that virtual is not the same as in person. I had lots of calls, Julie had lots of calls, and you don't want to pay full price for virtual. That was a big thing that came through loud and clear. This is not, OC is a high touch experience. You want to be with the facilitators, you want to be in person, and that virtual is not the same. Someday I hope that we can actually figure out how to do that. Maybe that's a whole new revenue stream, but for now, this is where we are, and virtual is not the same. So we recognize that. There was the board letter from May 15th that stated, at this point, we have every intention of holding programs on campus in the fall, barring any directives or safety issues that present us from doing so. You know, we kept wanting to tell you, we hear you. You want to be on campus in person, obviously when it's safe. And safe is a big asterisk, and I get it that we all have different definitions of what safe is. The May 21st letter that we spent was, and for some brand new families, this will be new to them, but you know, the idea of having a flexible schedule, of starting earlier, all of this was to meet your needs that we heard loud and clear. We want to be on campus. So we moved up the start date by 2 weeks, or was it 3 weeks, and added these things called float weeks in an attempt to be on campus as much as possible. We also talked about a cost sharing, this idea that if we are not on campus for a certain amount of time, those families who stayed, because families at this point had a chance to leave and we would not hold them to their contract. But for those who stayed, if we didn't deliver a minimum number of weeks on campus, we would give you a 25% credit for the following year. So this cost sharing, this elongated program year was all in an effort to meet what we heard loud and clear was you want to be on campus and virtual isn't the same as in person. By the way, let's see, once we gave that May 21st letter and gave people until June 15th to ante up again or just to end their contract, some families left because they didn't want to be on campus. It just was too unsafe. Some families left because it was the other way. You know what, I see where masks are going and I don't believe in masks and you're going to make me wear a mask. So we're going to bow out this year. A couple families did that. So we both on both sides. The vast majority of the families stayed. All right. So from there, by the end of August, there were the state and the county both provided metric-based guidance. You know, Chester County Health Department came out pretty late. I believe it was the end of July. The Pennsylvania Department of Education came out in June, I believe. And they were both tied to the same two metrics, the incident rate and the PCR. And for people who are still unsure, because I know there's some confusion, so the incident rate is the number of people being tested positive per 100,000 residents. And it's over the course of a week. So if in Delaware County, 10 people tested positive on Sunday, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for 10 people all around, so there are a total of 70 people tested positive in a given week. That's 70 people out of, I believe Delaware County is 500,000, about that. So they would divide that number by 5 to get how many people tested positive per 100,000. That's the incident rate. So of course you want to know that. You want to know how many people have COVID in the area. 25 people in Philadelphia is not nearly as alarming as 25 people in Westchester. So that's that metric. The other metric was the percent positivity rate, and that is the percentage of people that are of the people getting tested, what percentage are positive. So if 100 people got tested, 5 of them are positive, it's a 5% positivity rate. The PDE allows for in-person instruction, indoor, outdoor. Keep in mind, this is for schools where outdoor really isn't an option. So when they say in person, they're meaning indoor. We have a luxury, I get it. They were allowing for in-person, indoor, outdoor instruction in the low and moderate phase. The moderate phase was their version of hybrid. They call it blended learning. Their moderate phase was a incident rate of 100 per 100,000 or less, and a PCR of less than 10%. So their moderate phase was way more restrictive than Delaware County's, than Chester County's high phase. But we chose the Chester County Health Department guidance, which is, so that's more conservative. The high phase in the Chester County says that an incident rate less than 80 and a PCR rate of less than 10%. So those were some of the options. So now, why are we on campus? Why are we allowed, or why does our health and safety plan say that we can be on campus in the high phase? So first of all, understanding that in-person programming is vital to the community's cognitive, social, emotional, and physical development. I had lots of letters about people saying, it's really important that my young people interact with other young people in person. That was important to a lot of people. Not everybody, I get that. We are across the board. We acknowledge that OC has many distinct advantages over a conventional school. We have small program sizes. This is our smallest year, so we have even more space for most programs. We have rooms that allow for outdoor air ventilation. We have windows that open, and we have fans for every room to allow to increase that circulation. People attend only 2 or 3 days a week, so we're already part-time. And we have ample outdoor spaces, which absolutely we should use. So reiterating that families told us that they don't want virtual programming, they don't want to pay the full price, and they want to be on campus. Not everybody, I get that. And also, if we were virtual for long periods of time, people wanted a refund. So because of all of that, it came down to, okay, so we have the Chester County Health Department guidelines. What Mike and Julia put out in that email was pretty close to, wasn't complete, but it was pretty close. That original plan was low, indoor and outdoor, and moderate, outdoor only. And included in that was at 7 a.m. every day, if we're in the moderate phase, we would make a decision whether to be virtual that day or to be on campus outdoors, which adds a layer of complexity to staff planning for programs, to families that may or may not need childcare. If you don't know until 7 a.m. that day, if it's going to be too rainy, we're just do a virtual day so that we don't, because we know we can't be outdoors. That was part of it. And that plan also said it took into 4 counties, whatever the worst case scenario of Philadelphia or Montgomery or Delaware or Chester County. So we had those 4 counties. Let me go back to my notes here. So with all that, that is why, to follow the Chester County Health Department guidelines, they say we can be hybrid or in-person to the moderate. That means indoor, outdoor. I get that the option for a choice is in the high phase, they recommend virtual or hybrid. Let me actually step back one more time too, because all these terms, hybrid phase is treated, actually, as we wrote in the health and safety plan, hybrid phase and in-person is the same from an OC standpoint, because we are already able to social distance, to physical distance. So from a school standpoint, as Jen was mentioning, they're like, well, at a low phase, you can be in person, but in a moderate phase, or their version of hybrid was, now the school has to be, you divide your class up in half of them Monday and Tuesday, maybe they're on campus, and the other half's on campus Thursday, Friday. So that's when they talk about hybrid. We can already do that naturally. We have large enough rooms, we have small enough programs that we can do that. So that's why hybrid and in-person is the same thing for the OC model. So the high phase, like I said, it states virtual or hybrid. So this was an option, right? And therefore, from my understanding, based on knowing what people want, that people did not want the virtual, didn't want to pay full price for virtual and want to be on campus. Not everybody, but there was an option there. And the board chose to approve a plan that is hybrid or in person in the high phase. So I want to say this also does not mean to say that we will be outdoors much, that we won't be outdoors much of the time. No one is arguing that we want to be indoors all day. No staff member. And I actually have some questions that I can answer some of that too. We have a beautiful campus and we plan to use it. It was about having the options so that we can go indoors if we need to, if it affects the quality of programming. But we certainly have that flexibility to be outdoors, and we want to be outdoors. I realize this is disappointing for some of you. I wish we could provide a solution that would meet everyone's needs, but right now we don't have the resources to do that. All right. There was a question, will there be virtual programs if we go above 80 cases per 100,000? Yes, right? So that if we're above 80 cases per 100,000 in either Chester County or Delaware County, as it's written, we would be in the very high phase. That very high phase means we would deliver virtual programs. So we would switch to that mode. So we would be doing what we did in the spring, though better, because we've had time to create and adjust. Let's see, another question. Were public health or medical experts consulted in the development of the plan? Yes, we consulted the Chester County Health Department and their guidelines. They're the ones who put out these guidelines and we're following them. You know, we could have chosen to follow the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Chester County Health Department, which runs the Delaware County Health Department, is the most local. So that's what was chosen. What allowances have you made for staff who may feel uncomfortable holding programs indoors in the high phase? I've talked with all the staff and they all feel comfortable with the approved health and safety plan. Staff who wish to be outdoors in the high phase are planning accordingly, and this plan gives them the flexibility of being outside as much as they wish. No one is arguing to be indoors the entire time. Another question, should youth need to eat indoors, what will be the protocol for that time since masks have to be off? Will they be separated by at least 6 feet for the duration of the lunch break? Yes, absolutely. We're following the health and safety plan. And it states that each program has been assigned program spaces so they are easily able to meet the necessary physical distancing requirement of 6 feet. This physical distancing will be enforced during a lunch break, whether inside or out, so that doesn't change. There was a question, when does the health and safety plan go in effect? It goes into effect as soon as we begin the program year. In the meantime, the staff are wearing masks and we've begun doing daily screenings on ourselves to get comfortable with the questions that are asked and the temperature checks. Another question, can you provide clarification on someone who should stay home? Should someone stay home if someone is in their household test positive? We are hiring a nurse as per our health and safety plan, so that nurse will be on campus during at any time we have programming. That person will take a lead role in this. There are information in the Chester County plan I could go through. I actually can go through, I did copy and paste that. But you should stay home if you feel sick, if you don't pass the health screening for the Chester County Health Department. Right now, that is if you have one of the following symptoms, a new cough, a shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, or a new loss of smell or of taste, smell or taste. Or if you have two of the following symptoms, which is a fever, a sore throat, chills, muscle pain, fatigue, headache, runny nose, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. If you have a temperature above 99.5, taken temporal, you should stay home. And if someone in your household tests positive, members of that household should also stay home. So those were the questions I got regarding the health and safety plan. So any additional? Nora, I'll let you moderate.
Sorry, so you did answer a couple that came through.
Okay.
I see the hands raised there. I just want to give a chance to people who haven't spoken yet. So Alexandra Hedinger asked, how have you prepared the outdoor environment for learning? Tents, heaters, more furniture, adapted curriculum, anything like that?
Yeah, there are outdoor spaces being prepped. We did not do tents and heaters at this point. We have the ability to be indoors when we need to, that they're rather cost prohibitive. Maybe we will do them in the future. We can look into that. But right now there's a long lead time and those are things that should have been done earlier in the summer if we wanted to do that. But right now we can be indoors when need be, but we want to be outside when possible.
Okay. Ted Lee, I know you had your hand raised for a while, so I'm going to unmute you.
I guess it actually fits into this as well as the board, because you were talking about addressing, having, I guess Anton was speaking about addressing staff safety level, how comfortable they felt. And then I guess, like what seems to be, at least feels to be missing is like, how did you take into account family safety levels? Because other than asking us how we felt about a low community spread, we had no other context. So how did you assess the families' views on that in any way? And did you?
Anton, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ted. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. The survey was one data point, and that just reiterated the desire to choose in-person over remote, but it did not specifically address at the higher level. We also had a lot of communications from other family members, and I can't say we empirically recorded all of those communications. They tended to come throughout the course of the summer, but there was a lot of feedback there. I think we addressed the concern about safety level for families, again, by relying on the Chester County Health Department, believing that we have the capacity to completely abide by those standards. We feel we can meet a basic, what is a responsible basic safety level. If families feel that it does not meet their level, then they can make the decision not to put their young person on campus. Now, I want to make sure that those families realize we would like to have we would love to have your young people on campus, but we can totally understand if the Chester County Health Department's, the standards that they have set do not meet your personal safety level. We feel as an organization that that is a sufficient floor for us to operate from at this moment.
Yes, I think where the feeling is the feeling of being blindsided, because up to this point, the only mention of any type of community spread was regarding the low community spread. There had been no warning or mention of high spread. So only the people who had been in contact with you would know that. So so it didn't go out to the general families, only the ones who were concerned about actually being on campus, because the ones who were either way would be like, oh, okay, you're doing low, so we're not going to bother you because you've got our back. But what we're feeling, at least I'm feeling now, is the sense of being blindsided because this came out of nowhere.
I hear what you're saying. I understand that. And in hindsight, it might have made more sense to have a follow-up survey after that with regard to the high level, so that families could be made aware that we were considering that. We did not. I don't remember exactly the reasoning at the time. I don't think it was a conscious decision not to reach back out to families. I certainly don't remember any conscious decision, any conversations about not reaching back out to families about the high level. I suspect that may be a victim of sort of timing as we were reopening campus, and then the sort of the challenges we were facing in terms of the internal leadership structure and figuring that out. But Ted, I can totally empathize with the fact that, yeah, I can see if you're here and you only heard from us about the low, and we are now talking about the high, how you'd feel. Yeah, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it feels like it's a failure of the quote unquote A team and the board, because the families are the customers, and you're saying that you wanted to meet the customers' needs, but you never contacted the customers. Yeah. And I think I'll end it with that.
Well, I'll say we did contact the customers, perhaps not as thoroughly in hindsight as we could. We had a lot of customer contact and a lot of information coming through more than just the survey. But you're right. I think a survey at the high level would have probably put even more people on notice, and gotten much more empirical evidence there.
Yeah, because there's implicit bias of people who contact to complain or with concerns. So. Right.
Emily had a few questions. I'm going to unmute you now, Emily. Oh.
So my first one was, I was on campus with my children for testing this summer, and I observed staff entering and exiting the building numerous times without masks. One of the staff members is now on the pandemic team, so I'm wondering how we could possibly have confidence in a pandemic team when we have direct evidence to demonstrate that they can't even follow guidelines themselves. Also, just speaking to the comment about reference to honoring the comfort level of staff members. 3 staff members have resigned in the past 2 weeks, and 2 co-directors have stepped aside. One staff member who resigned walked into the open program for staff cleanup day during the red phase, in which staff were told that they needed to be masked. And she observed 7 open program facilitators, all of whom were unmasked in the open program. So I wonder how this is demonstrating creating a safe working environment for, for all staff, not just individuals to make their own choice on where they feel safe.
So I know back in June, I believe the recommendation was if you can't remain 6 feet apart, you must wear a mask indoors. And that was a different time period then. And as far as the open program people, we're all learning. We're all getting used to it's a new time. And the staff members are also the first time when they're back on campus after being virtual since March. And that was, like you said, back in June. And now we have a health and safety plan and they know what to expect.
And just a quick comment on the 3 staff members and the 3 staff members that resigned and the 2 code directors that stepped away. All 5 of them were given the option to do their jobs remotely and not required at all to be on campus if they felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, I certainly hear that. I just hear the speak to honoring the comfort of all staff, and then reference to all staff are in support of this, all staff are comfortable being indoors, all staff are okay with the health and safety plan. And that's a select number based on those remaining. So it feels like a misrepresentation of the phrase all staff.
Right. There are 5 people not participating in programming this year, and there are 13 that are staff members. And I talked with them all. We went through the health and safety plan. It was important, for them to buy into that. And all of them did. And for those who didn't, that would have been a great opportunity to offer some virtual programming. They had the opportunity to say, I'm not comfortable. That would have been fine. That would have then given us some staff. The reality is that the staff that have remained, they all want to be on campus, is what I've been told. So we don't have the staff to offer some virtual programming at this point. My hope was that those 3 that were uncomfortable, that had resigned, they would have been great. They could have run our virtual program. That was my wish.
Okay, Elizabeth Bradley raised her hand. You are unmuted.
Good deal. Yeah, I'm going to speak for myself here. So at the beginning of the call, I just want to clarify, we are a community that comes to conclusions by consensus. Is that correct? And that's consensus by everybody here on this call, by a survey that went out, directors and board. So can we just clarify that that's how decisions are come?
Sure. Yeah, sure. We strive to achieve consensus. We have not always achieved consensus. This was a case when there was a disagreement among the leadership team and we did not reach consensus.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority of the board support the decision.
And again, I'm speaking for myself as a caveat, and Liz, who's running to chase after the kids. The board and directors, you're in a no-win situation. So you have, how many participants are on this call? And if you polled all of us, we'd all have a different answer on what you could have done, and we could all be the Monday morning quarterbacks. So I think I just want to say thank you to having this call, because you're in an impossible situation. And what I'll say for our family is we are in full support of going back in person. The reason being because of the campus, because of the space, et cetera, that's what we're comfortable with. Again, speaking for ourselves and completely understanding others that don't want to be on campus. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and I would just say in responding to that, and I certainly don't want to insinuate that you're suggesting that your decision is somehow better than anybody else's.
No, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. I want to make sure that we are absolutely clear that, yeah, each decision is going to be a really tough personal decision for every family. And we respect whatever your personal comfort level is. we made a decision for the organization, and we are hoping that there are several families who will agree with it. And unfortunately, we expected that there were some that would not have their personal safety level met. But we could not think of a way to have both.
Right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more. Rick, does that end the health and safety plan section that
That's
you?
my notes, yeah.
Okay. The next section is programming. So a discussion of programming, answering the programming related questions.
Yes, okay. So there were a few questions regarding virtual options this year. As I think has been said now, the initial hope was to offer both on campus and virtual. All staff and co-directors were offered the opportunity to work remotely. So that was what we were hoping for. Due to limited staff, we are not able to offer a virtual option at this time. I will say, this is OC. If there are enough families that are interested in a year-long virtual only program on a Monday, if you want to contact me and we get enough people together, I can ask an open program facilitator if they would want to run a virtual only open program. So that's not off the table, or other programs. So I would love to be able to meet more needs of the community. I also realized that the health and safety plan still has some language in it regarding virtual programming. So I'm quoting here. It says, when feasible, we also hope to offer virtual only programs for families who do not feel comfortable on campus. At this time, this isn't feasible. As I said, we don't have the staff. Further in the plan, it says, we will offer virtual components when possible for all those uncomfortable being on campus at any point. So I want to be clear, because I think you guys need an informed decision, right? This is not intended to be a replacement to in-person. It's meant to be a way to keep a young person connected while they're absent. So if there's someone in their household that has COVID and they need to quarantine for 2 weeks, we're going to do our best to keep them engaged. That might be sending an email saying, here's what we've covered and done, or here's an article that we read. Maybe we can Zoom them in for lunch. So if that timing works, we'd love to keep them connected. So it's not, but to be clear, it's not a replacement for in-person. Another question, why are you not offering SYL programming? Obviously we didn't have the staff. Sue has grabbed the gauntlet, and as you all know now, we are offering a one-day SYL with Sue and Lisa on Thursdays for those who want to do that. Once again, recognizing, yes, Mike will be sorely missed. Mike is a phenomenal facilitator. My daughter's an SYL also, and I wish he could have been here. I wish he could run a virtual program, a virtual version of SYL, but we are where we are, and Sue picked up the gauntlet, and we will have a one-day-a-week SYL for those interested. Let's see. 2 questions on why not just be outdoors all the time. This was also, I wrote down, we plan to be outdoors much of the time, even though it's safe to be indoors, according to the Chester County Health Department. No one is arguing, no one on staff is arguing to be indoors when being outdoors is possible. The health and safety plan merely gives us the option to be indoors when being outside would interfere with the quality of programming. The other challenge with tents, besides they're expensive, but lots of things are expensive now. For us, we run 5 programs simultaneously, and we've identified 1 or 2, possibly 2 spots that we could put a tent that wouldn't turn into a mud pit. So there's some logistics there. So we took the approach of how to make the indoor space as much an outdoor space as possible. So as I mentioned, many rooms have windows that wrap around multiple 2 or 3 sides, fans in the windows. And we have the MERV 13 filters in our air handling system. All programs have two rooms except for one, and that's going to have the majority of the gathering space. So they're very spaced out. And also knowing it's going to be a very small year. I get it, because we're not going to be able to meet the needs of everybody, right? So I expect more people to drop, which opens up more space in the program, which allows for more distancing. This is welcome to 2020. Let's see, another question. According to your plans, we are a phase where we should be open. What is preventing you from starting programs? So right now, yeah, so right now, when I checked on Friday, I had those numbers. Delaware County and Chester County are both still in the high phase. I've been tracking them since July 30th. July 30th, Delaware County was in the very high phase. Since then, every week since then, we've been in the high phase. At no time have we dipped into the moderate phase. Some metrics have, and perhaps one of the counties, but remember, our health and safety plan is to look at the Delaware County metric and the Chester County metric and take the most conservative of the two, because that is where the vast majority of our families come from. So right now we'd be in the high phase, which according to our plan, we would be, outdoor, indoor, but the high phase. Back to where I was going. Yes. So yeah, okay, I think that answered that. According to your plan, sorry. There we go, I'm back in my notes here. What's preventing you from starting programs? Having 2 co-directors and 3 staff members step away weeks before opening, of course, left many tasks that need to be completed. Choice staff is, still has to be fully hired, so we're working on that. And that's what's taking some time, on top of course, trying to be transparent and having meetings like this and preparing for them. So my goal is to hopefully have a date that we're going to be opening up by the end of the week. All the staff will be on campus tomorrow, and that's where we're driving to. There was a question here, will young people be staying in one room all day, or will they have the freedom to move around campus? Per our health and safety plan, each program has a designated room or rooms. They also have an assigned bathroom. Once again, we also have the ability to, each program has its own bathroom. We do have the specialty spaces like the lab, the art room, the makerspace, and the wood shop. And as it mentions in our health and safety plan, these rooms will be used by a maximum of 1 group in the morning and 1 group in the afternoon. So they will have access to those rooms. Once again, I know most of our staff I think all of our staff are planning to be outside for a lot of the time. But winter will come, there'll be cold snaps, there's gonna be rainy days. And this health and safety plan gives us the flexibility to be inside when necessary, knowing that when we're inside, we'll be physically distanced wearing masks. Someone said, to date, how many young people are registered for each program? Even at our highest enrollment programs, it still allows us to meet the physically distanced standards in our health and safety plan. And of course, while we may be adding new families, because there are families that are interested in an on-campus experience this year, we won't be adding anyone that would violate the health and safety plan. So we'll keep the levels of our enrollment for each program within a level so that we can keep physical distancing. Boy, all this talking. In the event of another shutdown, what are the plans for programs? In the event of another shutdown, we deliver virtual programming for the duration of the shutdown. So this would happen if we have the shutdown that Pennsylvania did. Also, just a reminder, there is a very high phase in Delaware in the Chester County Health Department plan. If we're in that very high phase, we will transfer to virtual programming. And moving forward, what is the communication plan? I plan on to continue to update people twice a week, at least until we open. And once we start opening, we'll see what makes sense there. If that should be twice a week, once a week, or we'll see. So those are the questions that we received. Thank you for those. And now, any additional questions?
Okay, Corinne has been patiently waiting. Give me 1 second. You're good, Corinne.
All right. I have a few questions, so I'm not sure any of them are relevant to the program part. But I guess Anton mentioned earlier, I think, or maybe Jen, about mediation. And I know that mediation is currently happening, but I also know that it was asked for by Mike and Julia in early August. So why did the board not approve that till, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks? I don't know what the email said exactly. After it was initially requested. It seems like time is of the essence here when you have a large fracture in the administration, and you're also wanting to get a plan in place for the year.
Corinne, that's a great question. Jen, you want to get that?
Yeah, sure, I can speak to that. So the first mention of mediation was August 13th in a conversation with Mike and Julia. We discussed it then. We discussed it as a board. We all agreed that mediation was a necessary step moving forward. There was no doubt in that. The idea at that point was to focus on an opening plan and getting OC open first with mediation to follow. We largely agreed that mediation, while trying to open, would do exactly what it has done here, which is delay the opening of OC and delay this process. And we were interested in trying to open OC on schedule. That being said, when we realized that that was not, that we needed to change course, and we absolutely needed to change course, a mediator was brought on September 7th. So from the first date that we heard about the need for mediation to the date when a mediator was brought on was 25 days. So that was something that we did. We changed course on, and yes, maybe we should have done it sooner. Our goal was to meet the needs of the community, to get programming started, to get OC up and running, to provide the services that we committed to families that we would provide. And the board was attempting to do that.
Okay, I have a question specifically pertaining to programming. So when do we have until to decide if we want to stay enrolled or not to be refunded? If we want to start the program and quickly determine that we are not happy with the safety protocols, can we still be refunded? Do we have a status on that, Rick?
Not yet. I hope to have a lot of that information this week, talking with the staff, and I'll go from there. So that'll be coming out in a communication, hopefully this week.
Okay. Another question was, if the program goes virtual, can a family that has no interest in fully virtual get a prorated refund?
Oh, so if we go to my assumption there is that if we wind up going to a very high phase, that we'll go virtual. I will, that'll be part of, I guess, the decision making. I'll tell you the challenge, of course, with this is which was the challenge that we've had all along. If I understand why people would want a prorated refund if we go virtual, but as running a business, we don't prorate our staff salaries and their facilitator salaries. So that is the challenge. What I would expect is that, in the plus side, which I'm appreciative of, we now have a health and safety plan that people can react to. And everyone has the option to get a full refund, which I'm glad for. So you know what you are signing up for and going in for. So my thought is that probably there would not be a prorated at that point, because we make the commitments to the staff also. So it's that running a business and how do we do that? But I will appreciate your question. I'll write that down too, so I can give some more thought to that.
Okay, another question was, can you tell us how many young people are in each program, as well as how many current families are enrolled? I'm sure we don't have exact numbers on that, but do we have a ballpark?
I would guess around 50 families. Of course, as you can imagine, things are changing by the day. So, we'll see after this meeting, how many of you are comfortable with what's said and where you want to go forward. But I don't know. We'll let that play out.
If anyone has, I know I got a lot of questions right at the beginning that we were, maybe pertaining to other sections. So if anyone has a question they sent me earlier that they feel I've missed or anything, feel free to send it through again. I am trying to get through and make sure everyone's covered and that everyone is heard. So pertaining to any of the divisions that we discussed at this point. Corinne, I see your hand raised, so we will go ahead and pop back to you while people submit their additional questions. Go ahead. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess talking about the disagreement between the A team members about the plan. And I'm just looking back at this email that Julia sent earlier today, that they requested mediation in early August. I guess what I'm wondering too is, Rick decided to withdraw his support for the plan. So he agreed to it before the board meeting and then pulled his support in the board meeting. What happened there?
Oh,
We
Rick, you're
are
muted.
ongoing. So Corinne, part of the reason we are engaged in mediation is to make sure that everybody feels fully heard here. Mike and Julia are not here. I don't think it would be fair to them for us to be asserting what happened in the course of a meeting. I think the important thing to remember is Mike and Julia have said that they fully support the organization, and they thought them stepping aside was the best way to allow us to go forward with programming this year. And beyond that, I'm not going to make supposition. I'm going to suggest people don't do that either.
Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Sorry, I muted accidentally. No, I guess that question was directed at Rick. Why did he pull his support of the plan that he agreed to? Yeah.
And again, I would say Rick, in answering, may disagree with some of the conclusions or assertions made by Mike and Julia. And again, I don't think it's fair for them in this process to have, especially since we're in an active mediation, to be saying he said, she said at this point. So we can agree, and Mike and Julia can agree, and you read in their letter that they thought, based upon the fact that the board supported a plan that didn't meet their personal safety concerns, that it was best for them to step away and allow Rick and the board to create a plan and operationalize a plan that was going to meet and operationalize the plan that we had voted on and endorsed. So I'm going to say again, without them being present, I'm going to suggest we stay away from parsing discussions we had with them.
I got another question asking if we could share which 3 facilitators have left. Are we able to share that, or not? I'll defer to Antoine or Jen.
Well, I'd actually defer to Rick. I don't know what our policy is with regarding to share people who resign, to be honest.
I don't have a problem with it.
You know what? I don't know if they have a problem with it, though. I don't know if they gave permission for us to release their names. So again, in light of specific permission given, I'm not going to assume it was.
And to that end, I'm sure that Rick and facilitators will be communicating out to all of you who your facilitators for your programs will be. So.
Okay. I'm not sure. I think maybe there was an autocorrect issue in this one, so I don't fully understand. But this question is, when does the board meet? Which I can, and then there was an autocorrect in the second half. But we normally meet 4 times a year, but lately it's been about once a night. So it just depends. This question is, have the staff who left been given opportunity to share their letters of resignation with the community? Their valued members, would like to hear directly from them about why they chose to leave, particularly if they opted not to provide virtual programming. I do believe one of the letters went directly to the community. We did reach out to all 3 staff members. They did not want to have conversations further with us. So we did not get the opportunity to ask them if that would be okay to share that information. Okay, I'm just filtering through. I've got about, I'm doing last call on questions here, but I do have about a large amount to filter through. So trying to get through what I can. Oh, I've got someone's hand raised here. This question is, what did Rick and the board want that they did not get in negotiations around the health and safety plan?
So are you, so to be clear, there were two different health and safety plans proposed. One was brought to us in early.
3.
So three, yes. One was brought to us, two were very, very similar, but one was brought to us in, it was early August, and it was August 5th, there you go. And it was not tied to any health department, anything. So that was the initial plan that was presented to the board when the board asked for a plan, what the plan was. And so on August 5th, we received it, and I think it was 2 days later that the board met and decided not to approve that plan. And that was a majority decision at that point. The plan was then reworked with input from the board asking for the plan to align with the Chester County Health Department. That was resubmitted back to the board. And again, the metrics, the ability of OC to operationalize the metrics in a reasonable way without these daily phone calls at 7 a.m. as to whether you're inside or outside was not, the board, it didn't have the flexibility that the board felt that it could have under the Chester County Health Department, and it was not approved again. And then the third time the plan was finally approved with this indoor, outdoor, in all 3 phases. So, and I may have lost a little track of the initial question, but the idea was that we in the final version of the plan, the board was happy with the plan. I don't think that there was, I think that there was things like paying for a nurse, which is necessary, is maybe not necessary, but seems necessary, and we're willing to do. That was a bit of a struggle, I know, at least for me, but maybe not for other board members. It's a huge expense for a small campus, but I think it's an important one in the end. And yeah, so the board does not 100% agree on everything, but when we don't, the majority does move forward with it. That was the spirit of the
Another question was, as of now, who will be facilitating each program? Rick, are you able to answer that?
I can say the leads of each program at this point. So Michelle Brockway will be leading the open program. Linda Soffer is still the lead for GT1. Chris McNichol is the lead for GT2. Kelly Dillon is still the lead for GT3, and Kelly Dowd is still the lead for GT4. And Sue, who has been in SYL for 10 years, is going to be the lead for the one-day SYL.
Great. A nice message saying, could we as a community find a way to support the SYL program and help make it happen in an additional day? My heart's breaking for those young people. So I think absolutely. The one day came from the community, and, but I'd love to see the community continue to work together. So I guess that's more of a comment, but let people know that if you're willing to help or work together. Let's see.
Can I tag onto that, Nora, too? Just to reiterate, if there is, particularly for open program, if there is a bunch of people who would like a virtual open program, I could talk with Michelle Brockway and possibly offer something on Monday. So that, those things are not off the table. But if you guys want to get to me, get back to me and let me know, we can see if we can make those happen too.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I seem to be missing some hands up here. I'm stuck in the, okay. I have Riker here. I will unmute you now.
Okay. Is my audio working?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the whole pandemic situation has really revealed a lot of shortcomings in the leadership structure at OC to me, especially at the town hall. Learning for the first time that the community can recommend to the board, especially there being no information at all about this on the website. Will you release a full written description of the member selection and decision-making protocols of the board to the community?
Can you say what selection was that, Riker? The what selection and
The member selection and decision-making protocols of the board, a written description.
a written description?
Sure. Actually, Riker, I can adjust that a little bit. In our strategic planning process for this next year, that began in June, one of the things that we're moving forward with is a more robust board description, a more robust roles and responsibilities for the board, and a board kind of guidebook. So I think that in terms of being able for us to be able to publish moving forward, kind of more information about the board, its structure, its decision-making process, and everything like that. That can absolutely happen in the future. Lisa went over a little bit about how board members are selected. Again, anyone in the community, and we can certainly add that to the website, kind of this submission for ideas on board members who people think would meet the needs of you know, that have skills that the board is looking for. We'd absolutely be happy to add to our, we also have an advisory committee, which is another place where we pull board members from. So those are folks that we've met at Chamber of Commerce meetings, other things, even external to OC. So we invite people onto our advisory committee and then eventually, hopefully can bring some of them onto the board. So we're always looking for new opportunities for new board members. And our committee on trustees is chaired by Julia. That's maybe changing in the future. Lisa is also on the committee of trustees. So all of us have actually been invited to participate on the board by Julia. And so we've all been involved. The committee on trustees has been involved in the selection process of all of the board members. And board members are voted, the vote, unlike other votes that the board takes, the vote for new trustees has to be a unanimous vote. That is a consensus vote. So there's a little bit into how that process works.
I see.
What is a, oh, sorry.
Go on.
Go ahead.
What is a like rough like timeline for like releasing that information? You probably don't know exactly, but
no, that's
like
a great question though. So when we had our board retreat in June, the goal was to then move forward, put dates to all of our items for our September board meeting. And this kind of everything that we're doing now took over a little bit. So we don't actually have those dates aligned to those strategic items yet. But I would say, although we can't give you a timeline now, we could probably give you a timeline in 4 months or so as to better when we would be putting that information out.
Okay, I had Sarah Egan has had her hand raised for a while. I'm gonna unmute you.
Hi, Nora, actually going back to your question about the facilitator resignations, you said that you believe one of the facilitators who stepped down shared their letter or reasons for stepping down. I wanted to know when that occurred and who was it. It wasn't something that we received. And it's something that we've seen asked for a number of times. My second part of the question was if that permission to share is granted by those who have resigned, whether that has been granted or asked for. So that was my question.
Sure, I can look right now. I had thought that it was shared with the community. I know it was at least shared with the staff and not just directly the board. But sounds like maybe it wasn't shared with the community. I don't want to speak for the whole board, but certainly, I mean, like I said, we have reached out to the people that have left, and if they want their letter shared, you know, that would be acceptable to me. But again, I can't speak for the whole board. Okay, and I believe Chris Conklin has had his hand up periodically. I see you also messaged me, so I have to find you.
I just want to add while you're looking for that, Nora, is that typically staff, specifically facilitators, resign to staff. And since this has been kind of a crazy period of time, they did include the board, but typically staffing concerns are not really forwarded to the board. So I think this was an extenuating circumstance.
Okay, Chris, I am unmuting you now.
All right. Thanks, Nora. So my question goes back to the plan, and I think what, at least what I'm reacting to is not so much, you know, the plan itself, but I question whether or not the values and the process were followed here. And the reason I do that is the plan's ambiguous, right? It is true to say that the plan that we all have is consistent with Chester County Department of Health guidelines. It is. It's also true to say that the plan that Mike and Jules had put forward is consistent with Chester County and Delaware County Department of Health guidelines. They're both consistent with the guidelines. The guidelines are ambiguous. And that does put you guys in a really difficult spot. But what I can't get is, you know, if everybody is acting in good faith, right? The A team, the board, and, you know, they're coming to collaborate and find a solution. Why could they not find a solution that worked for all parties? There should have been a natural solution here if you followed the process. And second part of my question is, how is a solution that doesn't include Mike, Julia, Lucy, Alexandra, Amy, and Natalie be in the best long-term interest of OC?
So I guess I can speak to that a little bit. That it was never the intention for any of them to choose to step away, right? That was never the intention. We developed a plan that was implementable with all of them working remotely, not needing to be on campus, not needing to sacrifice their personal safety levels to provide programming. And the choice to step away for all of those folks was made by them. And it's an unfortunate one, and it's not one that the board wanted. Certainly.
Does it not make you reconsider?
We asked all of them. We asked, it's not our purview to ask the facilitators to reconsider. The very first thing we asked Mike and Julia was, would you consider rescinding your request for a leave? Additionally, we also made accommodations that of course they could take their leave and of course they could come back as co-directors. They just needed to help us move forward and open on the 21st. They also chose not to do that. So we have tried to go through this process. We have tried to work with them, and we are continuing to try to work with them to move forward. Nobody doesn't want them here. We want them here. We want them to be part of OC, and we are working desperately to try to figure out a path forward for that. And we are absolutely trying.
And was there any discussion?
I would add to what Jennifer is saying, Chris, and I appreciate you raising that question. That you raised that question with me personally when you called before. The challenge, like you said, it's both plans are consistent with the Chester County Health Department. So when the board agreed to support a plan that gave us more flexibility with regard to on-campus programming and honoring our prior commitment to say we will try to have on-campus programming when possible and when safe, that shows just the difficulty of the moment we're in. People's personal safety levels are something that are deeply held. And we, as much as several members of the board and several members of the staff thought, yeah, I feel completely comfortable, or I feel comfortable coming back, Mike and Julia, and perhaps some of the other people you mentioned, I'm not sure, did not feel the same way. And even though we do have a process of seeking consensus, as I said before, it is a commitment to it. We can't guarantee it. Our history has shown that we don't always get it. We've had other areas where we've not reached consensus on before. The big difference here is because personal safety is such a visceral, such an important thing, it's a life and death decision in the mind of the person who makes that decision, it can create the kind of fracture that wouldn't otherwise have happened, because we've had disagreements before where we voted and a trustee has not gotten their way or a co-director has not gotten their way, and they still come back. This is this moment. This is 2020. This is something that is in a way unavoidable. As long as personal safety is involved, you may have people who say, I absolutely cannot support anything that does not agree with what I'm comfortable with. And we respect that.
And was there any discussion amongst the board and the A team about how long we might be in the high phase and how long it might be before we're in the very high phase? Because I think experts would tell you it's not going to be long before we're in the very high phase. So all of this seems like a lot to lose and not a whole lot to gain. And it seems like a little bit of creative problem solving could have led to a solution that was better for everybody involved, including the community at large.
I appreciate that, Chris. We don't know what the future is going to hold. And again, that's another challenge at the moment, and trying to act based upon what we don't know might happen is also very difficult. So based upon the guidance of the Chester County Health Department, we believe that this is a plan that's actionable now, and hopefully it will be actionable for several weeks, if not several months forward. And hope that people act responsibly and help bend the curve. We know we are going to be acting responsibly on campus.
I don't want anybody to misunderstand either. And this is not to pat us on the back, but we have been spending anywhere from 6 to 20 hours a week trying to make this work. We all very, very much want this to work. We want it to work for everyone. We are trying desperately to not only hear what people are feeling and thinking and saying and listen to the process that they're going to, but we are also trying to make this work for the community. So please don't misunderstand, but we have been working extremely hard for a very long time. And I really, truly believe that we can come out on the other side of this. But suffice it to say, I don't think we could. I don't know that we could have tried any harder with the hours, the one-on-ones, the work with the mediator. And it's excruciating. It's excruciating to see people you care about in pain. It's awful. And, we're all victims now. And I just think it's important that everybody knows that this is, that we are not trying to get rid of anyone. We are not trying to ostracize anyone. We are trying very, very difficult as members of this community to make sure people are heard and to make sure that people I would like everybody to get something that they want. That would be awesome. So that is what we're working towards. We are working really, really hard as invested people in the community, as all of you are, to make this work.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. But I do see one or two people who haven't gotten a chance to speak yet. So I want to allow them a chance and just being aware of the time. Jessica, I will unmute you now. Oh, did it unmute?
Yes, thank you. I guess my question is, if everyone was offered, the 2 co-directors, the 3 staff that left and the board member left, if everyone was offered the opportunity or offered what they wanted, they were all offered to work remotely. I mean, they were offered to get their comfort level met, but they still all left. I'm curious why that is.
I don't want to speculate on, and they're not here, unfortunately, Jessica. Mike and Julia gave a statement, and I would say that that's the only thing I'd be comfortable stating. So I'd invite people to read it if they're curious, but beyond that, I wouldn't be comfortable speculating. And when you say people are, I want to also be clear, people were given everything they want. People were given the option of not being on campus and still participating. So that's that in their mind, I could only suppose might not be the same as getting everything you want. But I'm not going to say that, you know, I can't say that for a fact.
It just doesn't seem like this is about a health and safety plan, maybe.
I honestly believe it is about personal safety, and I think that's what was said in their letter. I believe, I take.
But you offered them their personal safety. You said you can be a facilitator remotely. You said you can work from home, but they still left.
I hear you, Jessica. I can say, yeah, again, I think what they said indicates clearly that it was, they didn't personally feel safe being a part of the on-campus programming. And so they're not with us helping with on-campus programming.
Okay, so I have, I see, let's see. I see 2 more hands up, and then that'll, oh wait, someone took theirs away. Okay. Oh, no, it's back. I see 2 more hands up, and then that'll be the end of it. So I have Sarah Egan. I'll unmute you now. There you go.
My question actually reflects a lot of what Jessica just said. I wrote down, you keep mentioning Mike and Julia's personal feelings regarding safety as a reason that they stepped down. I said, can you speak to the concerns that they had for the health and safety of the young people of OC, some of which has been shared in community emails during the late spring and summer? Because it feels like you keep pinning it on their personal safety levels when it seems like really a major concern that they didn't agree with the safety plan and how it might impact our young people, and not necessarily just a personal thing for why they stepped away. So I know you've mentioned that it's maybe something you feel like you can't speak for them, but is that something that you can share from the meetings that the board had that they have brought up? Because I feel like some of that was reflected in the emails that came to the full community, but I know that there's also probably a lot that we were not privy to.
Yeah, I think, you know, absolutely, you're right. And Mike and Julia have big hearts and care very deeply about the community as a whole. And the #1 concern they had was that, God forbid, something happen. They go with, you know, they go with a health and safety plan that is, you know, more liberal. God forbid something happen to a young person on campus, that they would feel responsible for that. And that was deeply upsetting to them. They feel so closely to the community and to the team, and we 100% absolutely respect that. And that is, you know, if you ask them, that would be their reason for leaving. And that's, you know, I wholeheartedly believe that as well. The struggle we came to is that as a business and as the community, you know, you do make the choice to go to OC, and you know, you don't have to go to OC. And so we felt that we needed to hold true to our initial statement that we would do everything we could to be on campus and provide programming on campus for young people within, of course, the Chester County health guidelines. And so that is what we decided needed to do. And then you could make the choice or not, whether to send your young person and, you know, whether to take that risk. But for Mike and Julia, you know, being, again, the loving, caring people that they are, the weight of that potential risk was, you know, was weighed very heavily on them. And we completely respect that. And, you know, it shows their love for the community. Okay, and the last hand was Corinne.
All right, so so I know there was talk about staff resignation letters, and even Anton mentioned a letter from Mike and Julia, I think the community would love to see that. We haven't yet. I know that went out to staff, but we did not see that letter. So that would be great. But I went ahead and reached out to the 3 who resigned, because these are people who have been at Open Connections for a really long time. I mean, Lucy's been here since like 1997. So like, what's going on there? Again, not hearing from the board, not hearing from the A team. I don't envy the positions that any of you are in right now. I realize this is all a super difficult time for everyone. But I was really, my heart was breaking because these people were leaving. And I know one person did make it somewhat public on Facebook. Like, what is going on that is causing this fracture? I asked if I could see their resignation letters and if I could share them, and all 3 of them agreed to that. So I will post them to the OC community after we hang up here. But really the gist of what they said was that it wasn't about the health and safety plan. It wasn't about their personal level of comfort. It really was because OC was not being true to itself. There was a breakdown in communication, in collaboration. There was a breakdown in trust. There were rumors that were being spread between staff. And that was really, really heartbreaking to hear. But again, I'll share those after we log off here. I have 2 really pressing issues that I'm still getting hung up on. One was the survey. And I know we discussed that through email before coming on to this call, but I'm still really disturbed by the fact that people, which would have been just the board and the A team, had access to this information. And then somehow it got out to other members of the community that were making these phone calls. I mean, I didn't get a phone call, but I was hearing, and actually just recently shocked to hear that people were getting these grassroots phone calls early in the summer. So I feel like we really, in order to build trust, we really need to understand who obtained that information and how they obtained it. And then I guess the biggest thing that I'm really stuck on, because Mike and Julia are the heart of OC, how we as an organization could say to them, you can't have your jobs back after this year. And I hear you when you say that you are concerned with the financials of this organization. I also know that there's a large donor willing to help us out during this time. So to risk losing the heart and soul of your organization during a year when, as Lisa said, there's extenuating circumstances, right? Staffs resigning to the board when they usually resign to the A team, and just weird things are happening, right? So it's not a normal year. And you know what, if my family doesn't agree with the health and safety plan, which we fully really don't, whatever, it's a weird year. We would be heartbroken, we would miss OC terribly, but it's 2020, it's a pandemic, weird. But I guess what I'm really hung up on is that Mike and Julia aren't being offered their co-director positions back when they are such important people to this organization. And I guess knowing that there's this really huge breakdown in what really should matter to OC that's occurred this summer. So, right, so like my asking questions and sending emails to the community was just kind of picking up on this fracture that was in the A team and in the staff long before it got to us, okay? So like, I don't want this organization to move forward and sweep all this under the rug. Like, something severe is going on and is wrong, and how could we not offer them their jobs back? That's just shocking to me.
Corinne, I'll respond. You are absolutely right that something serious is going on. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, which triggers for people very strong feelings about what is right and what is safe for them. What I disagree with is that something is wrong. We have been working with Mike and Julia and Rick, the entire board, with a mediator, trying to make sure that everybody can come together and have a productive role at OC in the future. what we have said to Mike and Julia is we absolutely want you back and we're committed to having you back. And that is why we're going through the step of having the mediator. That is why we asked them to be a part of this discussion. That's why they've given a statement. And at the same time, we want to be responsible to all the families within the OC universe. And realizing Mike and Julia are an integral part of it, we also realize there are a lot of families who want programming this year, and many of them who indicated a desire in having on-campus programming. So how to balance those interests and how to balance the fact that we are likely to see a huge drop-off in terms of our revenues this year. The way to be most responsible to that larger community was to give ourselves the freedom to say, let's work through this and see what it looks like, instead of making an absolute specific commitment, because we've made the general commitment of wanting Mike and Julia back. But let's see in this process if we can find a way to make sure, as like you said, there's some very heavy issues emotionally that we want to address, and part of that is through the work of the mediator. But again, we don't know what's on the other side, and we can't predict what's on the other side, and we have to be responsible to the entire organization. And that's why we're bending over backwards to make sure all the members of our leadership team have their voice at the table. And we're also trying to make sure that our families have their voice at the table, and their desires to have on-campus programming and their desires to have programming, period. So I absolutely agree with you. This is a very serious time. It's a very challenging time, and we'll continue to do our best to make sure that all the voices in our community are heard, including yours. And I appreciate you raising it, to make sure that we have the information necessary to make good decisions for the long-term sustainability of the organization. And I know it's a flat answer, and we're in a moment that's anything other than flat. But at the end of the day, the fiduciary responsibility of the board is to make sure this organization exists for future generations of families. And that is what we believe we're doing to the best of our ability, given the challenges of this moment.
Okay, and I'm going to do one last one just because I apologize. Seth Soffer, you've been mentioning and asking things and I've somehow missed you. So I will unmute you now.
Hey, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
You know, I think a big part of unschooling is people choosing what direction works best for their family and their child. And ultimate responsibility falls with the parent. And I don't think any one of us want to see our kids be sick or our kids cause other people to be sick. And we each have different levels of safety that we're willing to tolerate for risk. And I don't fault anyone for saying, you know what, hey, I can't be there. I don't want to be in touch with anybody. But the other side of it is also people who decide to be there. And I think that's a good number of people. And so I just like to leave that comment there that while the leadership may be responsible, ultimately it's the parents who make the responsibility for their child. And I feel like the board and the director right now are sort of respecting what seems to be a lot of people want to bring their kids on campus with mitigation efforts in effect. And also I'd like to say, on a different note, that it's sad that Mike and Julie couldn't be here tonight to answer questions in an open way to the rest of the community. And I said it in the email because it's part of being a leader, is facing the whole community and being able to talk to them. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in because we are at 9:30, which is our scheduled end time. So I wanted to just thank everyone again for taking the time to talk with us tonight. We are looking at ways to continue to connect the community with the board. To that end, we'll be adding the OC board email to the website. As I mentioned in an email earlier, someone mentioned that emails bounce back from that. So I'm going to try and figure out what's going on with that, because you should all be able to send to that oc.board email. And also looking at additional ways to allow the community to connect with the board. So to that end, I want to wish you all a good night. The recording of the town hall will be shared with the community later. So if, as always, feel free to reach out either to that oc.board at Open Connections, which will resolve the bouncing issues. If you can't get through to that, please feel free to email me. I'll share everything back to the board as a whole. So thank you, everyone, for a nice town hall. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much.